So back in our project here, I now want to work with those so-called templates. And just to make this clear again, templates will simply be HTML files which hold HTML code, which can also output some dynamic content. So which can, for example, render such a dynamically generated list, but will move the code from creating that list and from creating these HTML tags out of the views.py file into a HTML document. And for that, we'll need an HTML document. So therefore, we want to create a new HTML file, and the question now is where to create it. And the convention here is to go to your app folder, so in your project folder, into your app folder, in this case, challenges, and create a new subfolder in there. And you should name this subfolder templates. In that templates folder, you then create another subfolder, which you then again give the name of your app folder. So in this case, challenges. This might look weird, but this is a convention in Django projects, and it exists for a reason to which I'll come back in a second. So now we have the templates folder in the challenges folder in our project folder, and inside of templates, we got the challenges folder. Now inside of that challenges folder, we can now create our templates, our HTML files. So in here, I will create a new file, not a new folder, but a new file inside of the challenges folder. And I will name that file here challenge.html because I want to start with the template for an individual challenge. So for this view where we output the text for a specific challenge. So now we got this challenge HTML file in that challenges folder in that templates folder. Here in Visual Studio Code, it is basically displaying this as one path, since challenges is the only folder in templates. But this challenges folder is a nested folder in templates, and this challenges folder then holds this challenge HTML file. Now, this challenge HTML file will hold the regular HTML document structure we would expect from such a file. And in Visual Studio Code, we can quickly scaffold, which basically means automatically create that structure by typing HTML here in that HTML file, and you should then get these auto suggestions here. And if you select the HTML5 suggestion and hit enter, you get that default skeleton, this default HTML document skeleton created automatically. It contains the doc type, the HTML wrapper, and then a head section and an empty body section. Now in the head section, we can add a title, and we could name this monthly challenge, whatever you want. And then the body, we can now, set the body of our document. And for a start here, I'll add a h1 tag where I want to say this month's challenge, and then maybe in a h2 tag, go for a walk for at least 20 minutes every day. Now, at the moment, this is all hard-coded, but that's just there to get started. So now we can save this file and we got our first HTML document. Now we might want to send this HTML document back to the client, so to the visitor of our website, when this view function here is triggered, so as part of our HTTP response. Now how can we send back this HTML file to the client? Well, we still want to send back a HTTP response, and to this response, we can't really pass just the file. Instead, what we want to do here is we want to basically read that file, extract the HTML content, and store that in a string, which is then sent back with the response. So we want to transform that file to a string, which then basically holds the content of the file. And for this, Django has a function which we can import and use. From Django template loader, we can import the render to string function. And this will do what the name implies. It renders something to a string. It converts something to a string. Now with this import added in the monthly challenge view function down there, we can set our response data equal to render toString. And now here, the first argument which this function wants is actually the name of our template file, so of our HTML file. So here we could pass in challenge.html like this, but this alone wouldn't work. We actually need to use challenges/challenge HTML. And I'll come back to why we need that and why we placed that file in that subfolder in just a second. Now what this will do is it will read that HTML file, transform the content to a string, and then store that string in response data. And we're then still passing response data with the HTTP response back to the client. Now that's the first step. If you now save everything and go back to your running dev server, and you click on a month, you now get the month is not supported. Now we're actually getting this because it looks like somewhere in these 3 lines an error occurs, which we catch, and hence we send back that not found response. If we temporarily comment out try except to see that error, and we save that file, and we reload this page here, we see the actual error. And that's the error that the template does not exist. It's basically failing to find that challenges challenge HTML file. Now, why is it failing? Well, if you scroll down a bit, it actually tells you where it tried to load the template from, so where it looked for the files. And it tells you that it looked in some admin folder. That's not a folder we're managing, so it can't find it there. And it looked in some auth folder, which is also not a folder we're owning. So it basically didn't look for that template HTML file in our templates folder in the app folder. And there's a reason for that. Remember the settings py file in monthly challenges? So in that subfolder which holds our project name? In there, you can configure key settings about this Django project. And up to this point, we didn't need to touch it. But if we have a look at this folder now, we'll notice something interesting. There is a templates setting. And this is a list of dictionaries. And here we got some options regarding templates. For example, we got an option to configure how Django should parse and handle templates. And we definitely want to keep the default here. Then we got further processing options, but here the defaults are fine as well. But what's interesting are these 2 options, dirs and appdirs. Dirs is an empty list and appdirs is true. Now with dirs, here you could add paths to directories in your project folder that should be considered by Django. So here you could add directories where you want to store templates which Django should consider. So we could add our challenges templates folder here. Now for this, it is important to know that the path we want to specify here actually should be an absolute path. And therefore, in this settings py file, we actually got the base dir helper variable, which gives us the path to this overall project folder. So we can build up subpaths based on that base dir as a starting directory, so that we don't need to start at the operating system level and build the path to this project folder in our on our computer, but that we can start from the project folder level. So what we could do here is we could go to dirs and then reference base dir, and then add something to this path, which we can do with this slash here in Python as well. And here we could then add challenges, so point at our challenges folder, and add templates. And by adding this, we're telling Django that in our project folder, that's what we point at with base here, we'll have templates in a challenges folder and there in the templates folder. So that Django should look in this path as well when it's looking for templates. I don't add the nested challenges folder in the templates folder to this setting here, because I'm referencing my template here in the view such that I do tell Django that there will be a challenges folder in which this challenges HTML file sits. If we now save that and reload this page, this template is loaded correctly. And that means that we now can also bring back that error handling here. But that is actually not the best way of making Django aware of our template here. There is a better way, because at the moment we would have to basically change DIRs whenever we add a new app to our project. And whilst we might not be doing that too often, this is such a common case that this kind of support for looking for templates in an app folder is actually built into Django with that second setting here, the app DIRs setting. Therefore, I'll comment out this part here in DIRs, so that this is again an empty list. And instead we want to utilize this setting, which actually is already true by default. This setting tells Django that it wants to look for templates in the app folders. So it will automatically look for templates folders in app folders. Except for that it didn't seem to be doing that, right? It failed to find our template. The reason for that is simple. We know that we have this app, but Django isn't fully aware of it. Yes, there is this challenges subfolder, but that alone is not enough. If you have an app that should be part of the overall project, and you want to use features like this template detection, you need to officially register your app with that project, you could say. And up to this point, we haven't done this yet. Now, how do you officially register your app? There's another setting in that settings.py file. If you scroll up a bit, you'll find the installed apps list here. Now, there already are a couple of apps installed, which are basically all built-in apps, built-in features Django ships with. As a side note, this again emphasizes what I told you earlier in the course, that apps don't have to be big standalone products, but that you can look at apps as modules of a project. There is an admin module, an auth module, a module for managing sessions, and these are all modules which we haven't really used up to this point. Except for content types, we used this indirectly because that's actually a module which is built into Django, which is responsible for detecting when you're sending back HTML and for setting the correct headers on the response. But what we want to do now is we want to add our own app here. And we do this by adding a string. And since the rest of this file uses single quotes and I don't want to change them all, I will also use single quotes here. You could, of course, also use double quotes. But we want to add a string here. And we simply want to use our app name here. Challenges, because that's our folder name, and also the name we have here in that apps.py file in the challenges app folder. There, the app name is basically set to challenges. That's why we want to add challenges here to installed apps just like this. And what this does now is it makes Django aware of our app, officially aware. And now, for example, for features like template detection, Django will look into our app folder and it will look for a templates folder there. And therefore, this name also isn't up to you. This has to be named templates. And now if I save that with our app added to installed apps and app DIRs still set to true, if we now reload for April, this still works. And remember that earlier it failed. It still works because we're now successfully using this app DIRs feature. And that's the best way of making Django aware of your app-specific templates. Now, if you would have some other template folder outside of your app, so some global templates which are used by multiple apps, for example, then you could add this folder to DIRs as we did it earlier. But for your app-specific templates, I strongly encourage you to utilize this built-in app DIRs feature because that simply is the best practice way of doing it, and it also keeps your settings leaner and doesn't require you to add all those DIRs to the DIRs list here.